Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here with my next Avatar comic review. This is going to be my review for the Avatar comic from the Dark Horse Free Comic Book Day Gold Book featuring Avatar and also Star Wars. This one is called Ramen Rumble. So it's written by Brandon Huang, art by Bessa, colors by C.E. Chant, and the letters are by Comicraft. So, I feel I have to mention this right up front. This book was not available, it seems like, in certain countries / regions for the same reason certain other previous Avatar free comics haven't been. And that is when they get paired up with Star Wars, there is some weirdness surrounding Dark Horse Star Wars comics, because it's Marvel have the main license, but then Dark Horse have the license for like all ages Star Wars comics, and they have a weird licensing thing. So there's been a few like I haven't been able to get, and I wasn't able to get this one. So thankfully someone sent me the pages so I can actually do this review. But yeah, getting into it here, I think this is definitely a tale of two kind of halves in a way of what this book is. In terms of the art and presentation, that aspect of the story, it's great. It's amazing. Bessa's art is super strong throughout the full 12-page run here. And the only, I think, frustration is just that most of it is just Samurai Appa and Ronin Momo, and there's only the page at the end where we get to see the actual characters we all kind of really care about. But I would absolutely really want Bessa to come back and do more Avatar comics, whether that is maybe getting one of these comic miniseries that's coming out, another free comic book day book. If they do a short story collection, I would like to see Bessa get another chance on a different book, because the art is really good, because it's very clean, it's very kind of show accurate, you know, like on model, while still having that sense that like it is clearly the style coming from an individual artist. So I really do like that aspect of things, and yeah, the colors work really nicely as well. So on that side of things, it's kind of like top marks basically, that this is really good. We've seen from some of these free comic book day books in the past that we've got introduced to some very interesting kind of creative team members that have gone on to do more work, and I hope that's kind of what's happening here. To me, the issue on the other side of things, more of like the writing, what actually happens in the book, is just that, one, the story concept from the very beginning, the fact that they decided that this is what this year's free comic book day book was going to be about, just feels like, who asked for this? Why did you make the decision to have the book be a dream about Appa and Momo in their samurai and Ronin kind of daydream versions? Like, I like that scene in Nightmares and Daydreams. It's a fun little thing that happens, but it's like, it was fun in that episode. You don't need to come back to it, in my mind. And in that sense, I think this is really overdone in terms of choosing this over any other possible story. And I get it. This is, to a certain degree, discussing the book on the basis of what it isn't rather than what it actually is. But we'll get into that. I think this is a relatively fair point of avenue of discussion for this book, because this is a particularly extreme example of story choice. This isn't just that, oh, they decided to do, like, you know, another Korra comic about Milo or something like that. It's like, fine, Milo's a fun character, like, that's cool. We maybe had, you know, after 2 short stories about Milo, maybe we don't need another one, that sort of idea. But there's a difference between that and let's focus the story on these 2 joke versions of these characters from this one episode. That's like a reference. Like, that's a bit of a, like, really full 12-page comic you're going to give to these 2? And there's a massive case of just, why? And look, if you really like it, if you really like those characters, you probably love this comic. If you're like me, where I'm like, I appreciated that for what it was at the time, but I didn't need any more, then there is a big sense of like, yeah, this wasn't for me. But then we get into the story itself, and I think there are issues with it. And I would hesitate to criticize the writer here as well. And I want to be clear about this, is that I think most of the problems come from just, this is the story that they were tasked with writing. And I don't know how you're particularly meant to do more than what was presented here, because it is such an odd and different type of story that you really have so little material to get into with any of the characters presented, because Samurai Appa, Ronin Momo are not really characters as such. They were like caricatures. And so what do you do with them to make the writing stand out? So in that sense, I feel like I can't really judge if the actual writing quality in this book is, you know, good, bad, or somewhere in the middle. It just seems like, yeah, for the story that this is, it's fine, I guess. But the problem is that I think the story that's presented here isn't fine. I don't think it's actively bad. I just think it's deeply inconsequential. And then, given that they've done this extreme thing of they're giving the dream characters their own story, it's kind of incredible how plain, middle of the road, like almost a little bit boring at times this is, rather than it's someone's dream. Sokka's having a dream brought on by eating some bad noodles. This can be a bit crazier than you've presented here. And I think that's probably the biggest choice that's made in this comic that just doesn't work. It's kind of odd how low-key everything is here. That because there's not really much characterization to go off with these characters, they don't get around the characterization by doing crazy stuff. That's not what they do here, when it's probably, I think, maybe what they should have done. Nothing that happens in this really makes it kind of come across as if, like, we're in this kind of dream scenario where anything can happen. It's played so by the numbers that it's just, okay, Appa and Momo can talk. Appa's a samurai, and Momo is a Ronin. They are traveling around the world, which, based on the presentation here, does seem to just be the normal Avatar world. That they're in the Fire Nation, they go to a Fire Nation ramen house to get some food, but they don't have any money. The Fire Nation, actual people, show up. Again, it's humans in the rest of the story. It's just Appa and Momo that are kind of talking animals in all of this. Everyone else is a human. The Fire Nation soldiers come in, so I guess the war is going on in this alternate universe version of the world. And the Fire Nation soldiers cause a fuss, Appa and Momo defend, and they are thanked by the ramen shop owner by being given food. So they've kind of earned their food, and that's basically how it ends. We do get the very interesting, I think, final page, which is that Sokka is the one to wake up, and we get the idea that, okay, canonically, this is basically, I think it's set post Nightmares and Daydreams. So they have the whole episode dealing with Aang's issues with his nightmares and daydreams. And then when they finally get past them, Sokka, when he goes to sleep, I guess, that night, he has a similar dream to what Aang had. And so you see them all on the ground. He wakes up, he looks over at them, and there's the koala sheep and everyone else. He looks over at actual Appa and Momo who are just asleep, and reveals that, yeah, that's the last time I eat expired noodles. And it's fun. It's a fun little detail there. I'm so glad they added it in, because I think I would have had a much bigger problem if this book had just literally ended with just Samurai Appa, Ronin Momo. That they didn't do anything within the comic to actually directly tell you that it's a dream. So at least we can come out of this being like, oh yeah, and canonically Sokka had a similar dream to Aang, and it's like, okay, fine. Saved at the end here by this choice. But also the final page feels like kind of such a tease, because it's like the characters in their early book 3 outfits look so good in this art style. I would have loved another story set during book 3 with this art style, and just give the artist and the writer a little bit more to do that's a bit more interesting. But also, again, it makes me reflect back on the rest of the book and be like, this was Sokka's, like, ill from expired noodles dream, was just this very plain story of Appa and Momo getting into a brawl at a noodle house and earning their meal. Nothing particularly crazy happening, just those two presented as samurai heroes. okay, that's fine, I guess. And that's just the thing, start to finish, is that, look, I get it. Some people are probably going to come on this video and be like, why are you treating this comic so seriously? And the reason I do it is because these Frigg Comic Book Day books have been really impactful in the past. You can't, I think, dismiss a comic just because it's only 12 pages. Because we've had great 10, 12-page comics, even less pages with some of them, in the past. Free Comic Book Day books have included Friends for Life, the Korra and Naga story. Shells with Sokka, Suki, a bit of Kyoshi backstory. That was excellent. Rebound was actually a very cool comic because it was basically a prequel ahead of Smoke and Shadow. Clearing the Air, really good comic, kind of getting some Tenzin kind of flashback, covering some timeline stuff that we hadn't kind of seen before. And even stuff like the Milo story, Lost Pets, was like, okay, Milo getting to interact with a lot of animals. It felt like the Tale of Aang, but done with Milo in the Korra era. That was kind of fun. I would say the only properly, previously weak Free Comic Book Day book that just is like, yeah, this was kind of very, very plain, was the 2023 Avatar comic, Lost and Found, where it was just like Toph and this little girl, and it was kind of too small of an incident. You sort of saw what they were trying to do, but it maybe didn't come across as strongly. But at least it was a story. At least it was fitted in somewhere that added something to, you know, with Toph early on in her time with the group, that you got to see a little bit of a different side of her that early on. Here, the only like addition to canon is just that, oh, an extra joke to add on to the top of the mostly comedy focused Nightmares and Daydreams episode is that Sokka also has a bad dream kind of like the night before, which again, from a kind of maybe continuity point of view, is also kind of sort of fitting, because when we get around to the invasion, it's Sokka who actually has the nerves, not Aang. So maybe this is a little bit of a setup before that, but I feel that's me adding in more than is maybe directly presented in the comic as such. So that's why I expect a little bit more from these Free Comic Book Day stories, and they chose to go rather extreme into the, yeah, this is just a random story. But then, because it's such a random story, because it's using dream characters, they didn't do enough with it. They didn't make it crazy enough. There's not enough of Appa as a samurai just being weird and odd, and Momo as a Ronin just being like just exceptionally just all over the place. It was too much, taking it like almost taking itself a little bit too seriously, I'd almost say, because it's not even like filled with like tons of humor. It's got the basic humor you'd expect from something like this, but I think nothing kind of beyond that. And I would have liked to have seen what this was with just complete dream hijinks. Like just absolute craziness happening all over the place. Like all the people are like weird, you know, talking animals or something like that. That's the world that Samurai Appa, Ronin Momo inhabit or something like that. So I just think choices were made that made this one quite a bit less interesting than others. I want to be clear when I'm getting to the end here. I don't hate this comic. I don't think it's bad. I just think, as right now, one of 3 releases in the year, this stands out like a sore thumb as just way off the level that it kind of should be at. I think, given what these Free Comic Book Day books are meant to be, give you an idea about Avatar comics so that you will want to go back to your comic book store to buy the actual Avatar comics. This is a bit of an odd choice to be that, and this will make people pick up The Promise, and this will make people pick up Turf Wars. Maybe, but I don't think this specific story is necessarily doing that, except just the fact that it's any Avatar story would accomplish the same thing. That sort of idea. So, yeah, it's fine. It's a little bit of fun, but I also would say to anyone who maybe goes down that road of like, oh, this book is so fun, enjoyable in that way, that's not much of a review. Just saying that the book is fun and leaving it there. That's what all Avatar comics are when you break it down. Like every single other comic, you could say it's fun, but oftentimes you won't say it's fun because there's other stuff to talk about. You can talk about how strong the characterization is, specific scenes that really, really stand out, how much it added to the universe, a specific character arc, something along those lines. Instead, this book, it does stand out because it's got really, really good art that I think a lot of the fandom want to see this artist come back for more stuff. And that is certainly a success that needs to be noted. But it's sort of like, that is a praise that is almost like an absence of what the actual story is about. And when you actually talk about what this book is about, it's a bit of a issue, I think. Very similar to what I would say about the chibi comic, Aang's Unfreezing Day, where the art is very, very cool, and they could have done something very fun, very unique with that story, but they chose to, I think in the same way as this one, take the kind of crazy premise of like a chibi comic and make it really, really plain. And just that there's nothing super interesting happening here. It's just the characters just being themselves, but it's very low key. And in this case, it's, well, I guess this is what these two characters are like, but we don't know these characters very well because they are just dream constructs. And there's that sort of idea as well. Like, I think I would have preferred even just like a more experimental comic where, like, what if it was just actual Appa, actual Momo going on an adventure together, and you just get to focus on that aspect where the dialogue comes from the characters that they're interacting with rather than Appa Momo themselves. That could have been fun. A kind of Tale of Momo, Appa's Lost Tales style thing, but a fun story that like is them kind of properly paired up together. Instead, they went for this, which, yeah, sure, bit of fun, but I want more than a bit of fun from these comics. And that's where I'll wrap it up. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts were on this comic. What did you think of the first time seeing Bessa on art? And then what were your thoughts on the story as well? And again, I would appreciate it if you, when giving your feedback on this, you acknowledge kind of to a certain degree what I've said here, and kind of maybe not just say it was fun, leave it at that. You know, what are your actual thoughts on this? The decision making behind choosing this as a story, given what these free comic book day books have been in the past, given that they did this. Was the story actually interesting really in any way, given that this is what it's about? I want that sort of detailed feedback from you guys. But otherwise, yeah, let me know what you think below. But that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.